Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript, looking at the Kansas City Chiefs versus the New Orleans Saints for Monday Night Football. And we have a couple teams that are really banged up, and it's going to be a brutal matchup for each of these teams, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. Today, I'm going to be breaking down the Monday Night Football game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the New Orleans Saints, looking at a 43.5-point total with Kansas City as 5.5-point favorites in this one. They're playing in Arrowhead, so that gives a natural bonus to Kansas City, having that home crowd. And the 5.5-point spread is a little surprising to me. I don't think that Kansas City, with all their missing weapons, should be 5.5-point favorites, but New Orleans is in pretty rough shape themselves, and they're playing on the road, so I can see where that number comes from. I think that the Saints could have a chance to pull this one off, but they are struggling on their offensive line. They're missing their center. They're missing their backup center. They're going to be on their third string starting center, or third string center, versus this Kansas City defense, which has been really good this year. Kansas City defense is obviously going to be stepping up to make up for all those losses on the offense. That's typically what happens with a good team like this. The defense will step up and make sure that the team still has a chance to win a game like this. Make sure to hit that like button, get me to 30 likes. That'll trigger a shorter video later on, and hit the subscribe button too. When I put out that shorter video later on, you're going to want to be subscribed to the channel and have sign up for alerts so that you know when that short video comes out. It usually comes out about an hour or two before lock. And help me get to, I'm aiming to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. I just crossed 1,000, so I appreciate everybody helping me get to that point. Looking for 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so if you can hit that subscribe, that helps me out big time. I appreciate it. And let's get into this matchup breakdown. As I mentioned, it's a 43.5-point total with the Chiefs as 5.5-point favorites. There's lots of reasons for that. Kansas City has a rough matchup on their end, and they're missing a ton of their weapons, but I think the defense is stronger maybe on the Kansas City side. New Orleans is missing those starting offensive linemen. They're missing, in addition to Eric McCoy, right guard Cesar Ruiz is also out. As I mentioned, Shane Lemieux, he's the backup center. He is also out, so they're going to be on their third string center tonight. So Carr does not do well under pressure. He has when both those offensive linemen were out, he was under pressure 37.9% of his dropbacks. So that is not good. And it's a 40% completion rate under pressure for Carr. So that gives you an idea of how poorly he does under pressure. And on top of just facing a really good Kansas City team that blitzes a lot and they play man coverage a lot. So that's going to be rough for Carr. But we can find some areas where we might be able to find some of these Saints that are startable in this matchup. Chris Olave, for example, has been really good versus man coverage, and he's been getting a lot of reps in the slot recently. He is currently in the slot for 25% of the time. That's in bump up from earlier in the season. That's good for Olave. We want to see him with more slot reps, especially in a matchup like this. You can see last week, 16.7 DraftKings points, 20.6 DraftKings points. Last week with Carr under similar duress, Olave had 10 targets. So they might be scheming him more in the slot to make up for, like the pressure that Carr is getting. Kansas City's also been weak against tight end position. I'll jump over to tight end real quick. With the Saints, we're looking at Juwan Johnson as our primary tight end. Taysom Hill is out. That's another injury that should impact at least the tight end position in this game, because Kansas City, we've been targeting tight ends against them throughout the season. We saw Isiah likely have that monster game, and there's been several other tight ends that had really good games against Kansas City. I think Gesicki was a target 1 week against Kansas City, put up like 16 DraftKings points. So Juwan Johnson in a good matchup here against Kansas City. He hasn't done anything yet either, which is good for us because we want that ownership to be down. And with Taysom Hill out, that's probably going to put a little bit of a headline on spotlight on Juwan Johnson. So maybe not quite the ownership that we want. Like, let me take a look at that real quick and see where we're standing as far as a projection on ownerships for him. See if I can get an actual ownership projection on him. All right, so Juwan Johnson, as far as his ownership projection in this matchup against the Chiefs, which should be, like a decent matchup for him. I'm looking at about a under 20% ownership. So I do like that ownership number, especially at the price we're getting him at. As the day goes on, though, expect people to be talking about him and that ownership to tick up. But Juwan Johnson, potential guy, car under duress, probably looking to get the ball out quick. And Kansas City has shown a vulnerability in that middle of the field where we can see, maybe Olave take advantage of, and Juwan Johnson as well. The guy that does not have a good matchup on the Saints is Shaheed. Shaheed just struggles in general versus this type of a defense. I can give you an idea of what his target rate is. So versus man coverage, Shaheed has an 18.8% target rate versus Olave, which has a 40% target rate. So almost double the target rate for Olave. So, common sense would say that, maybe Olave has a better matchup here tonight. And Shaheed is coming off of, like a pretty good game last week. So maybe some of that ownership will lean towards Shaheed. He had 16.7 DraftKings points. He had 11 targets last week against Atlanta. Let's see what kind of man coverage they're running. So the Falcons run man coverage at the 30th highest rate. So that you can see why Shaheed might have gotten a decent amount of targets last week. He wasn't facing man coverage, which he gets that 18% target rate against. But still not a bad target rate. He just doesn't do as well versus man than he does versus zone. So let's go to Kamara. Kamara is going to be in a rough matchup against this Chiefs defense, which has shored up its run defense this season. Chiefs have only been allowing 15 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, and they face some really good running backs, Derrick Henry being one of them. But they've been very strong against the run. They are maybe a matchup that we want to be cautious of, especially with Kamara. When you're thinking about him maybe in the captain, maybe he's not as great of a captain option as we would have liked, even with Taysom Hill out in this game and, like not poaching those touchdowns from Kamara. Patrick Mahomes has struggled the past 2 seasons. He has not put up, like those top quarterback numbers that we're used to. But this week, he has even harder time because he's missing Rashee Rice. Pacheco is out, and he's just basically on his backup scrubs. We haven't seen Marquise Brown all season, and Hardman is questionable on top of it. So really just a rough situation for Mahomes here. We saw Travis Kelce kind of resurrected last week when Rice went out, and Kelce is basically his primary and possibly only weapon apart from Xavier Worthy and some of the scrubbier guys that really don't get enough targets to be interesting. We'll take a look at those guys in a minute. But Mahomes in a rough matchup on top of that because the Saints are only giving up, see, 11.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So Saints have been strong against quarterbacks. Get an idea of the quarterbacks they've faced. They faced Jalen Hurts. They faced Dak Prescott. They faced Bryce Young, and they faced Kirk Cousins. So they face some decent quarterbacks, and they're only allowing 11 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So consider that with Mahomes, maybe, like when you're considering him as potential captain option, I think you can still put him in the flex, but it doesn't hurt to fade him either. We'll take a look at his ownership. Mahomes is going to be 16.8% owned in the captain and 68% overall. You can fade almost 70% of the field if you don't have exposure to Mahomes. If you're doing, like a handful of lineups tonight, that might be a good strategy to go about. And by the way, when you see me building these lineups, I'm building these not to tell you guys who to start and who to play. I want to give you guys as much nuggets and information to work with as possible. But I saw a guy in the comments yesterday saying that they got rid of one of the starting wide receivers in their lineup, and they put in Kayvon. They put in Turpin instead, and Turpin was a good value guy last night. He wasn't someone to replace one of your starters with. So Turpin actually paid off as a value guy with 9 points last night, but obviously he's not going to outscore, the guys that are getting, like 80% snap shares. He might be able to break one off and be a big home run for us, but he's not a guy that we want to take out a starting, caliber wide receiver and replace him with outright. So you want to mix him in with, like certain guys, not replace outright. So I saw a comment like that, and I was like, why would you replace the guy with Turpin? Turpin was a good value guy to add into your lineup, and to get your studs into the lineup, not to take studs out and replace them with. So just keep that in mind when you're building these lineups. I'm trying to give you guys information to work with and, potential directions to go with your lineups. But if you have guys that you like, don't replace them with what anybody tells you to replace them with, or anybody like might suggest, because my goal when I do these is to take out outside information and go with my spreadsheet information and the numbers from my spreadsheet, and trying to get an unfiltered view of the slate without looking at a bunch of other DFS content. So, I think that you can do a lot of improvement with your own play if you're listening to your own research and your own numbers, instead of listening to other people and just doing what other people say. So it definitely will help you out more when you're able to understand more the analytics that drive people towards certain players and whatnot when they're building lineups. So Chris Olave, already talked him up. I like him tonight. I think he's probably the best Saint on the slate in this matchup. Especially if he's getting more of that slot work. Derek Carr, not so high on Derek Carr. Like he's going to be struggling under pressure tonight. Going to be a really hard start on Derek Carr tonight. 14.4K in the captain. Definitely not starting him in the captain. But like I said, if you guys like Carr, feel free to just build your lineup around him, build your story around Carr succeeding tonight. And it could definitely happen. That's definitely going to be a way to get a little different tonight, is have a Carr centric lineup. Xavier Worthy. The Saints have been giving up, they've been really good against the wide receiver, but they've been giving up 22.8 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. And Xavier Worthy is like the next man up for Kansas City. So, despite all the injuries, the Chiefs still have a couple decent weapons in Kelce and Worthy. So don't be shocked to see Worthy do something. I know he hasn't done much. Patrick Mahomes is usually pretty slow to warm up to these new guys, and he's going to be forced to tonight. I mean, Kelce's going to get a huge workload probably, but like Worthy is going to be like another one of these periphery guys that he's going to have to lean on, and Worthy has the most talent out of any of these wide receivers on the team. So I do like Worthy tonight. Kelce, I covered already. We saw him with Rice out. He finally showed up with 9 targets, 15.9 DraftKings points. Has yet to score a touchdown on the season. Like we could definitely see that tonight. Saints have been decent against the tight end position, allowing 9.7 DraftKings points, but I think Willie Gay, the linebacker on the Saints, is out tonight, and that benefits Travis Kelce as well. So some matchup advantages there with Kelce in this matchup against the Saints, knowing that like they're going to be banged up. The Saints are going to be banged up on the linebackers, and that'll help out Kelce with his matchup. Rashid Shaheed, went over him already. Like he's a guy that could pop off at any time. Like don't feel like you have to take him out of your player pool, but just know that his matchups a little bit. This is a little bit more of a matchup favoring Olave than Shaheed, but he could always pop off at any time. He's shown monster upside in the past. Eddie's getting a lot more targets. He's getting about 20% target share in every game so far this season. So he's legit this year. He's not just one of those splash play guys like he was like in previous years. Kareem Hunt is likely the starting running back for the Chiefs this week. And Kareem Hunt is at a cheap price, 11-1. At least in the captain. As far as his flex salary, he's 7,400, and the Saints are giving up. Saints are probably like they're one of their weaker spots is against the running back. They're middling against the running back, allowing 20 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. So Kareem Hunt is a guy that could be started tonight, and they might lean on him. He rejoins the Chiefs after a multi-year stint in Cleveland. Kareem Hunt now back with the Chiefs and looking like the starter because the rest of the running back situation is pretty rough. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is likely out. I believe he is out. Yeah, he's out. He's dealing with PTSD. And we got, who else? P. Ryan is the other interesting guy. Steele has been fumbling left and right. So Steele has lost the trust, even though he has a pet alligator, but he is lost the trust of the coaching staff. And now we see, maybe Kareem Hunt and P. Ryan step up in this role. P. Ryan is going to be the passing game, more in the passing game, I believe. And he had no targets last week. He had 4 targets versus Atlanta. He had a couple other targets throughout the season. Hunt, as far as targets, he also had 3 targets. So Hunt's going to be good in general for at least opportunity. So I do like Hunt this week. Butker, Butker's always good. 13, 10, he's had a few double-digit points. This should be a difficult game for both offenses, and these are the type of games where we can see the kickers come into play for sure. We got Group over on the Saints, and he had a 22-point game in week 1 against Carolina. Don't be surprised to see him get some work tonight as well. Steele, I covered. I don't know if I'm going to have any Steele exposure just because he is struggling with those fumbles, and Kareem Hunt seems to be the next man up on this running back situation. Chiefs D and Saints D are both in play. They're both going to be able to pressure the quarterbacks who struggle against these types of defenses. Patrick Mahomes. Let me get an idea of Patrick Mahomes here. Apart from, like just struggling in general, like Patrick Mahomes, 32nd in the league in air yards per pass attempt, on top of the Saints allowing the fewest passing points per attempt. And yeah, just a rough matchup. I believe Mahomes struggles more against man coverage too. Let me just double check that. Games he's played man coverage against Baltimore is probably like the 16 DraftKings points against Baltimore. I think that Mahomes does struggle a little bit more against man coverage, especially when he doesn't have a Tyreek Hill on the team. But Xavier Worthy might end up becoming one of those guys. Let me look at the man versus zone coverage here for the Chiefs. I want to see which guys he typically targets. All right, so Saints are running man coverage at the fifth highest rate in the league. It looks like the guys that get targeted with man coverage, Rashee Rice was getting a 31% target share. Xavier Worthy is getting a 20% target share versus man coverage. So that gives you an idea of how they're using his speed. And I don't really see anyone else of these guys. So yeah, man coverage with Worthy is going to be an interesting. Worthy might be captain Worthy play tonight, given the situation here. Knowing that the Saints have been vulnerable against the wideouts, Worthy's getting the most targets under man coverage, and Worthy is going to be their go-to guy tonight, apart from Kelce. So don't be surprised to see. And Juju Smith-Schuster is running 50% of his routes from the slot, where the Saints are only giving up 8.8 DraftKings points a game. So that is going to be a good situation for Worthy. He's running 65% out wide, where it looks like Saints are most vulnerable. So keep that in mind with Worthy tonight. Chiefs D, Saints D. I like both those defenses. Watson, I mean, I guess he's like as close to a wide receiver too, apart from Juju Smith-Schuster, as you can get. 3 targets last week, 2 targets, 2 targets. Hasn't really done anything with them. The same story as last year with these guys. It's just like it was always difficult to try to figure out these receiving weapons on the Chiefs. And I thought at the beginning of this season, all that would be cleared up when they brought on Hollywood Brown and they drafted Worthy. But it's just like they're right back in it, like right back into this rough situation with their pass catchers. Juwan Johnson, I covered already. I do like him tonight. Foster Moreau, like he hasn't really gotten targets since week 1, but he is another one of these Saints tight ends. I think he's more of a blocking tight end, and he's really not that much of a discount off Juwan Johnson. But maybe if you want to sprinkle in a rotation of Moreau, he might be a good rotational guy. Sky Moore should see more work. But really, he hasn't done anything. He was hyped up his rookie season, and he really has not done anything. Tipton is getting a lot of the slot work for the Saints. Like, so Olave, getting a decent amount of slot work, but Tipton might be one of these guys at 1K salary. Let's see what his snap share is. Tipton had a 39% snap share last week. That's pretty decent for a 1K guy running in the slot where Kansas City has been most vulnerable. Like we've seen it in the middle of that field. Kansas City allowing 13.5 DraftKings points a game to the slot. They're allowing 18.1 to tight ends. That gives you an idea of, like where the offense might funnel in this game. So Tipton could be interesting. Keep him in your player pool. Wilson Jr. is Is this CJ Wilson? I think this is CJ Wilson. He's been decent in the past. Um, let's see what kind of snap share he's getting, because it might be Tipton, might be the guy. Cedric Wilson, that's what his name was. Cedric Wilson had a couple weeks with 40% snap shares, and then like a couple weeks with 20% snap shares. So it gives you an idea of like maybe what to think there. Mason Tipton has been pretty consistent the last couple weeks. He's gotten 39% snap shares. Wilson was listed as questionable for week 4. I think maybe Wilson was dealing with an ankle injury or something like that. But yeah, it looks like a couple weeks ago, Mason Tipton was filling in for Cedric Wilson. So maybe Cedric Wilson is the starting slot guy, but just keep him in mind too, as a rotational guy. He's not a guy to go all in on or anything like that. But Cedric Wilson and Tipton, running all those slot routes are going to be interesting in this matchup, and they're cheap. But we might not need to go too cheap. Yeah, so that's all I see. This Justin Ross guy, was hyped up in the past. It looks like he's just on the practice squad. Keep an eye on actives and inactives. Get an idea of some of these scrubbier guys that are getting brought into the game, made active for game time for Kansas City, especially. But keep an eye on that Tipton, Cedric Wilson situation too. So let's start building a lineup here. Make sure to hit that like button, looking for 30 likes to trigger the next video, the short video later on. Subscribe to the channel and sign up for alerts so you get the notice when that video comes out, and get an idea of, once I've done a lot more research throughout the day, get a better idea of who I'm landing on for my lineups. And again, don't listen to anybody else talk you off of a play that you like. If you like a play, you stay on your plays, because you've done research that maybe the people who are giving you information don't know about. So if you like a guy, you like him for a reason, because you've researched it and you like the matchup. All right, so let's go into captain here. Going to start out with a Worthy captain, because I do like that matchup. I like Olave's matchup as well. And Kelce, I think, is in play. If I got those two guys in play, I'm going to put Mahomes in there too. That's going to leave us with 3450 remaining. I think this is a night for these kickers. I'm going to put Group in there. I'm going to say maybe Carr is able to move the ball, but he struggles a little bit more with completing stuff. I mean, at that point, you could put in Foster Moreau. You could put in Cedric Wilson. You could put in Tipton. Get one of those slot receivers in a build like this. If I wanted to take out Group and maybe put in Juwan Williams, or no, sorry, Juwan Johnson is who I'm looking for. 4,700 that leaves us with. That gives us defenses. So, I think I like that direction a little bit more, where I have an opportunity to get one of these defenses in. If I had this build, I'd probably put the Chiefs defense in, and leaves you with 700 on the table and everything. One thing that I want to get in here as well, maybe Mahomes. Maybe I switch this up a little bit here, because I want to make sure that we're getting some Hunt exposure. Because Hunt has a, he should be decent tonight, get a decent workload. And he has a somewhat decent matchup. Let's put Hunt in the captain. Let me get an idea of what kind of captain ownership he's going to have first. Hunt is going to have under 7%. So I like that for Hunt, especially in a matchup where Mahomes might struggle. Let's put in Kelce, because we know he's going to get the volume. And let's put in Olave. We know he's going to get, like a decent volume. Now, Worthy, 4 targets per game. Even though I like him, let's put him in, like, just to see. Going to leave us with 5,600. If you wanted to put in Mahomes in this lineup as well, that only leaves us with 300. So it's probably better to go in a direction where we're maybe writing a story where you can have Kelce and Worthy racking up PPR points. We don't have Mahomes in here because Hunt is taking those touchdowns and because Butker is kicking field goals instead. That leaves us with 5,900. We can get Group in there too and go double kicker in this one. Olave is moving the ball for the Saints, and then Group is coming in there and kicking field goals as well. You could get either of these defenses in. If you like Hunt, maybe you put that Chiefs defense in. Maybe Derek Carr is struggling with his third string center and his just bad matchup in general. That would be another Chiefs build. Now, these builds are kind of lending themselves towards Chiefs builds, but I want to do a New Orleans build. So let's do one with Olave. I think if they have success, it's going to be with Olave, and maybe Kamara is able to overcome this matchup. So if Olave and Kamara are succeeding, Chiefs are probably having to open it up a little bit on their end. Let's get Worthy in there. And that's going to leave us with 4,800 per guy. You could also put in Kelce if you want to stick with that volume. Kelce is actually cheaper than Worthy, which is surprising to me. So that's going to leave us with 5K per guy. Let's get Hunt in there. And that's going to leave us with 3,800. Let's get Juwan Johnson in there, liking that tight end matchup. Going to leave us with 5,400. At that point, we can get in, Butker, Group, one of these guys. I'd probably put Group in this lineup because, again, if I have the wide receiver not attached to his quarterback, then I want the reason for it is because maybe they're getting yards and receptions, completions instead of touchdowns. So they're having success moving the ball, but then they get stalled out in the red zone or when they get closer to the red zone. So that would help us get Group in there. You could put Butker in there as well if you wanted to. That would help us justify not having Mahomes in a lineup. But those kickers, I like using them when I'm light on quarterbacks because they give us good correlation with the quarterbacks not scoring enough fantasy points because they're not getting touchdowns because they're stalling out and having to kick the ball instead, or the running backs are poaching those touchdowns. Like when they get the receivers get stopped at the goal line or whatever, like stuff like that. So you can get an idea here of the types of builds. I think my favorite captains are probably going to be like Hunt and Olave, and Worthy I like too. But let's see what his ownership is. Worthy's got under 5% owned too, so I think he makes a good one too. So that's going to be it for now. Just make sure to subscribe to that channel. Sign up for the alerts. Help me get to 2,000. I'm looking for 2,000 subscribers by the end of the football season. I'm at a little over 1,000 now, so I definitely appreciate everybody helping me get there. And make sure to hit the like button because 30 likes is going to trigger that shorter video later on. And that's all for now. Good luck, guys, and I will see you later on.